Howdy, folks. Happy Monday. Well, it's happy for some people and not so happy for others. We have lots of hockey to talk about, which is really strange since it is August 3rd.
Is it October?
You called it Eklund.
There you go. There you go, Jen. It's rubbing off on me. All right. But we do have some pre-show stuff, and we'll go to Russ.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about the NFL. Jan posted in a group chat earlier that there's 43 guys that so far have opted out. There probably will be a few more over time, but Doug Peterson now was tested positive for COVID. He's the second coach to test positive. The one thing about it, and I'll start with Anthony on this one, the AP picture of him, Ant, doesn't show a mask. And I have a feeling, and I've seen photos of a lot of these coaches that aren't wearing masks.
And the issue is when that photo was taken, how recent that photo was taken. So
but you have to believe they should be wearing them on the field with the players. And I've seen, let's put it this way, I don't know what he was doing, but I've seen reluctance from other coaches to seem to wear masks. And right now they're not on the field, so I don't know.
We see it in the NHL too, though. I mean,
yes.
They're not on the bench with masks on. We saw Lane, you were watching the game yesterday, but none of the coaches are wearing. Heck, some of them are wearing suits. So
the guys to the left were wearing masks. The trainer and all those guys. You're right. The head coach isn't.
The coach is not. And
I think all these sports are going to find out. Now they're in a bubble too, where the NFL guys are not in a bubble. So we'll give them that. But I think everybody's got to figure out you need to wear a mask when you're in close proximity to people.
Yeah. Well, the other thing with the NFL that I thought was hilarious was the fact that apparently, as part of the new CBA, the opt-out window was 7 days after the collective bargaining agreement was ratified by the players. The players are dragging their feet on ratifying it,
of course.
So because they want to allow some of the rank and file to be able to opt out. And the NFL came out yesterday and said the deadline is Wednesday. If they don't opt out by then, they get no pay for the rest of the year. So now, the NFL is cracking the whip, and of course they can do this because they've got a new CBA in place.
Yeah, it's crazy that I feel bad in the sense that players should be able to go through a certain amount of camp to see if they feel like they're safe. Like the end of the day, in any sport, I feel like they should be able to do that. So let's switch to baseball, because yesterday there was a crazy story with Yoenis Cespedes with the Mets, and boy, I'll tell you. Early on, when the Mets put out this press release saying that, well, we don't know where he is. He didn't show up at the ballpark. We'll let you know. That was a really bad move by the Mets, and pointed out by Abby Mastracco, who covered the team, that basically they were trying to not only get ahead of this, but also paint a picture of this so that fans would turn on Cespedes. And so we see later on the day that his camp said, yes, he has opted out. We found out that, hey, the Mets went to his hotel room and nothing was there. But what we found out late at night was that twice during this session of baseball, however you want to call it, he went to ownership and said, hey, are you benching me on purpose because you don't want me to reach performance bonuses? Because he had to renegotiate a deal with the Mets for this season because of everything medically that was going on with his career and with the contract. And so that was probably worked into it. There were probably some performance bonuses. And sure enough, this is what always plagues the Mets. It is always about cheapness. It is always about, it's never our fault. It's always the players' fault. And fans are really getting fed up. They really are.
Well, the only thing, and I just looked up his stats while you were talking. He had 31 at bats so far, and most of the star players and the starters on the Mets are in the 30s. Rosario's at 39. Alonso's
maybe it was in the field, Mike. Because he hasn't been playing any in the field, so maybe there was bonuses for that.
Well, maybe that. And Jan, I was just going to say that guys like Dominic Smith, maybe they want to give them more of a look, and maybe they told them you're not going to play as much.
Maybe.
So, yeah, at the end of the day, it's. I know management does kind of dictate certain things, but I think when it comes to, again, when you're in a shortened season, and you have certain, you brought in Cespedes to, as a veteran presence, but at the same time, what's his current? What is his current batting at? What was his current average?
He was hitting 161. Yeah. So
He had 2 homers. He had 4 ribbies. He had started 8 out of the 10 games already. Whether you believe who you want to believe, and I don't always believe the Mets a lot, and you know that, Russ. We're on the same page on a lot of that stuff. They had, supposedly Rojas had talked to him about maybe starting to get him in the field more if possible. But, benching him for the first time they benched him, they got in at 3:30 in the morning after a road trip and he gave him a day off. This was the second time out of 10 games he was benching him. It wasn't like he was being benched. I think, honestly, it came down purely to a regular dollars and cents. His salary was cut from $29 million to $6 million because of the wild boar incident. With the proration, he was only making $2.2 million. And I guess he figured, you know what? For the effort, it just wasn't worth it, and I'm just going to opt out. But the problem is, depending on this conflicting story, suppose he told some of his teammates in the clubhouse on Saturday night he was likely going to do it, but he clearly never told management. And whether or not you agree as to what the Mets released as a press release, if they hadn't released it and the word filtered out that he was missing, they would have been vilified, right? So because of their history, they're going to get vilified regardless of whichever direction they
but you never should put out a release that says a guy is missing until you know why he was missing.
Right.
That is my point. That is PR 101. That is a big no-no in my book. Everybody was worried about the guy.
Yeah, exactly. Everybody was thinking, oh my God, did he jump off a bridge or something like that?
Correct.
So, all right, let's get started because there's a lot of hockey stuff. We're going to go probably right up to 12 o'clock when the first game starts. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Monday, August 3rd, 2020.
I'm Jan Levine and impressed that Mike got the date right.
I'm Anthony Mangione. I always believed in you, Mike.
Russ Cohen, Sportsology.
He just said October before. How could you believe in him?
That's true.
I knew he was going to get it right on the official announcement.
And I'm Eklund, and this is the Hockey Buzz here at HockeyBuzz.com.
You should have said July then.
Eck will be here in any moment, so I can get away with saying that, unless he listens to the playback. Okay, let's start with the first series that started on Saturday. The Carolina Hurricanes and the New York Rangers. It was a 3-2 victory for the Hurricanes. Not a surprising result. And Russ, we talked about this off air. I thought that the Rangers, and you said this when they played the Islanders in the exhibition, they sort of played into what Barry Trotz was trying to do in that game, and they sort of played into what Rob Brindamore wanted to do, and they end up losing because of it.
Yeah, there's no question. I mean, when I went into the Zoom room for the Hurricanes because I was working on an article I posted on Sportsology about Svechnikov and Netjes, Brindamore basically said, he opened up with, this is exactly how I thought it would go. And he didn't say it meaning the score. He said it meaning he thought the game would go a certain way. He coached his guys to play a certain way. And big note to the Rangers, you can't out-hurricane the Hurricanes. Like they're a good team. If you want to kill their goaltending, but you have to get through their defense and shot blocking to get to their goaltending, which means you have to go to the net. For half the game, the Rangers didn't, and still for most of the game on the power play, they didn't. Going up ice, they even seemed disjointed. Their breakout wasn't good. There were so many things that I think they took for granted because everything just sort of clicked in the regular season, and it wasn't clicking for them in that game.
So I'm going to go with, I don't know if I'd say take it for granted. I think, first of all, Carolina dictated the style of play, and the Rangers, to a certain extent, played into it. They also talked about, David Quinn talked about, if you watch the game, being physical, but being smart physical, meaning you don't take yourself out of place to make hits. Trouba did that early in the game. Brendan Smith did it, led it to the 2-on-1. If you notice, the goal that the Rangers scored, the first one was Buchnevich taking the hit to get the puck in deep, creating space in order to get it. So when he talked about taking hits and being smart and being physical, that's what he meant in terms of taking the punishment to create the play, not just dishing out punishment to hit people. On the power play, the big issue was they couldn't gain the zone, and if they did gain the zone, there was a draw, they were losing the draws. And the other piece that I thought was an interesting stat that the shutdown line posted, failed exits was 21-9 by the Rangers. If you look at the first goal, which partly was due to Jesper Fast getting blown up by Brady Shea, they failed to get the puck out of the zone. Carolina retained possession. That led to Fast basically losing focus and Jakub Slavin beating Fast into the slot and beating Lundqvist. But all that was created by their inability to get the puck out of the zone, which is a problem that they've had forever, which is failed zone exits.
Anthony, it was funny because I was watching the post-game press conference of Quinn, And don't get me wrong, Jesper Fast is a really good player and really effective. But when Quinn referred to him as their best player, which is what he said in the post game, we lost our best player. He's not their best player. It almost was like he was making an excuse for the loss because they lost one guy and they had to sort of rejig their lines. I mean, I
thought it was an interesting statement too. I don't know if he meant whether it was a turn of saying he's their best penalty killer, but he did say what he said. So, when you've got a lineup with Artemi Panarin in it, that's the player that should be your best player, along with Mika Zibanejad. They've got two outstanding players in that regard. But the biggest concern I have, again, is Carolina is just I'm watching them just absolutely blow them up in the Rangers in their end. And that really kind of put the Rangers' head on a swivel, I think, through much of the game. I really felt that, that they, and as Dan indicated, a lot of their failed exits, really that first hit, I think, by Shea did set the tone early on fast. And once they walked,
and they did get killed up the middle center-wise. They did. And that's another thing where that's just something they're going to have to deal with the series.
I thought that's the one thing now where they have a big advantage down the middle with Aho, Trocheck, and Stahl in the middle.
So Jan's been saying, Jan, to your credit, and you nailed that. You said that ahead of time.
Yeah, but the thing was, we weren't sure that we were going to see the Trocheck that we saw in Florida, and whether he was sort of past it or if that was injury related. And obviously, the way he played in Game 1, it looked like it was injury related because he was a very good second line center and matched up really well and contributed. So, and now that they have him as a number 2 and slot Stahl in as a number 3, that poses a lot of matchup problems for the Rangers and any other opponent that Carolina faces.
I mean, I'm sorry for being late here, guys. I had a little family.
No problems.
We're all set. I showed up at my computer and my mouse was gone. Just like one of my kids had borrowed my mouse. It's like when if you have to find a mouse, like it just most of my anyway. It's
called the Orkin man.
Trying to find an old mouse, like a regular mouse, and is impossible these days in this day and age. Anyway, so when I tuned into the game, I was just the whole Lundqvist thing really kind of shook me. Like I didn't know. I wasn't on Twitter beforehand or anything like that, so I didn't know that they were going to Lundqvist. I thought this was just Quinn's like bold move. Like I thought, okay, he's going for it, and I was impressed by it. I was like, that's cool. I think that's a good move for a couple of reasons. Like one is if you had to go, like we said before, if you went with Sherskin and then pulled him, went to Lundqvist, that was worse than going with Lundqvist pulling him and going to Sherskin, in my opinion. So I thought, what did we think of Lundqvist's performance? I thought he was
good.
He did his job.
You look at the pad save he made on Gardner. The only mild criticism you can give is that on Slavin's goal, he could have been higher up in the crease, cutting down the angle. He was deep, which gave him the upper corner over the shoulder. But that's putting him mildly because Fast got beat so easily that he had a whole ton of space and time to try to be able to beat him top.
He kept him in the game. There were some big saves, like Jan said. There were at least 2 or 3 big ones that he was making one-on-one saves, basically.
But conversely, like I said when we were previewing this series, is that Carolina needed Mrazek to play at least average for them to win. The Rangers didn't get enough scoring opportunities to prove that he could play average. The couple goals that he let up weren't that great. So, I mean, if they can apply pressure to Mrazek.
I think the Stahl one is the one that
was weak. The first one he had no chance on.
Right, he had no chance.
The second one is the one that you can have some criticism on, and then late, it nearly gave the Rangers an opportunity late there.
That was a tip, though. The last one was big off defenseman. I mean, that was a little bit.
It hit off. I think Niederreiter in front. It kind of deflected off in front.
Yeah. I mean, this game was kind of set up, I thought, against the Rangers in a lot of ways to start with. And I'm really going to be interested. Today we're going to find out what momentum means, like in this tournament. You know what I mean? Because I felt like Wade said, like the Carolina Hurricanes had done everything in their power to talk about how they were going to lose this series. Like they had gone every which way to make the Rangers into a favorite.
But they were better prepared. They were
better prepared, and I think the young team like the Rangers, I think it affected the Rangers more than it affected the Hurricanes. You know what I mean? Like the young team like the Rangers now suddenly being thrusted from like, oh, you're a rebuilding team, maybe we'll make the playoffs in a couple of years, to now you're a favorite in the first round of the playoffs. It was too quick for that team, I thought, and I thought the nerves took over a little bit in that way.
So I thought the interesting part though is that the kids played better than the veterans, right? So Hedl had a very good game. Capo Caco had a really game, which is why I think he's going to be on the second line. Julian Gauthier had a really good game. If you look at it, Chris Kreider didn't really show up. Artemi Panarin most certainly didn't show up. Defensively, I didn't think Fox had a particularly great game, and Tony DeAngelo played like he was nursing an injury because he really didn't have a particularly great game. So look at it, the kids were the ones who really had the much better game, had the better legs, were much more engaged than the guys who were the veterans on the team who've been through the playoff wars.
I mean, I'll be honest. I don't think you should put Kakko on the second line. I think, again, in a playoff atmosphere, that's a bridge too far. You're better off putting him on the third line. I think that's another matchup where you're now trying to force it. He's having enough trouble trying to find space. It's not like he's a scoring threat. Now, he did draw a good penalty, and he had a couple good plays, but I don't think that warrants him being on the second line, I'll be honest.
I think Panarin today is going to –
I would put him on the third line.
I think Panarin's going to be a monster. I have a feeling we're going to see a monster from Panarin this morning.
We have to, because he was basically non-existent. I mean,
he has to do something.
With the exception of the assist and the secondary assist in the game, the Carolina completely taken him out.
If you watched him on the Columbus all these years, and even in the playoffs, he's been a big playoff guy. Like for Columbus, the first, last year against Tampa, he has a built. He was even big in the series they lost against Boston. Panarin was. You can see that. I think he's the definition of a gamer. Like what makes him. And there's a lot of great. He's got incredible skills, but what makes him so good is the way he actually picks up his level too at the same time. So if we don't see anything from Panarin today, I'll be really shocked. I mean, I know Carolina did a great job shutting him down, but I don't know. I wanted to, and I know we have moved to other games really quickly. So any last thoughts on this one before we go on?
Just whether they stick with Lundqvist, which I think would be wise because he wasn't the responsible party for the loss, and who they bring in for Fast. I've seen some reports of Fogarty or Kraft stuff.
I would go with Fogarty because of the size and strength.
You're going to need it against. You're going to need that against Carolina.
What are your thoughts, Jen?
I would go with if they're going to put him on the fourth line, you go with Fogarty because he's only going to play 8 to 10 minutes, and he profiles as a fourth liner. If he's going to put him on the third line, then I would go with Kravtsov. In my opinion, though, I originally thought that if we saw Kravtsov, it would be Game 3 if they were down 2-0 and they had nothing to lose, and then put him in. But I think today, I think you're going to see Fogarty. I think Russ, without any other options, especially since Brendan Lemieux is suspended, you have to almost put Kakko on the second line.
I guess that is default.
I was just thinking in terms that as I was thinking about Brendan Lemieux, I'm like, maybe that's a reason why Kakko's higher on the line.
I'll tell you one more big mistake, and this is something Quinn should do. You have Julian Gauthier. You should be putting him in front of the net on the second power play. There's no question he's got great hands and size, and they didn't do it at all.
I hope we see another fight between those noted pugilists, Ryan Strome and Justin Williams, too.
The one thing I will say,
that was fun.
If Strome doesn't have a good game, don't be surprised if you see he'll move up to the second line if he's playing as well as he did the other day, because Strome didn't have a particularly great game either.
No, he didn't.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. All right, so that game's right after this podcast at noon.
Yes.
I wanted to get a general thought from all of you guys. So I wasn't here to start the show, but I wanted to start with this. I'm glad you guys started with the Rangers. How much hockey have you watched over the last 2 days? Like, I want to know, like, we're obviously it's our job. All right. But have you seen who all has seen parts of every game?
I'll start.
I watched bits and pieces of every game.
The late one was at that point. It's like
I will say for me though, because it's Sabbath, I missed a bunch. But my iPad, while I was writing my column on Saturday night, I had the game on my iPad as I was writing my column.
The only games that I didn't watch the majority of were Calgary, Winnipeg, and Minnesota, Vancouver. I watched but the first period and a half of Minnesota, Vancouver. Mm-hmm. That's of the 8 qualifying round games. I barely watched any of the round robin games, and that's for a reason. Because
I flipped around to everything I've watched. I probably watched 5 or 6 full games. The night games certainly only like a period and a half.
Because that Boston Philly game was as I suspected when it came into the round robin game. Certain teams like St. Louis and Boston, who have confidence that they can just turn it on and play, they don't give a crap about
which at this point now, Mike, is starting to get I think is going to be a bit dangerous.
Yes.
A little dangerous.
And I mentioned this before we came on today. Mm-hmm. That my concern for Boston here, even though it's a little bit of a different environment, is that they can run potentially a risk of becoming this year's Tampa if they think they're playing with house money. And you saw it yesterday in the post game with Cassidy, he was furious.
Yeah, it's not
with
without
how his
risk.
players played.
Yeah.
It's not without risk, but I mean,
you know what I think changes that though? Again, the Flyers have a good history against Halak, right? They do much better against Halak. If Rask is in there, Rask holds those guys more accountable than Halak does. Halak just does
Rask is a huge injury for Boston.
Rask would be killing those guys in the locker room. That would be the difference, I think.
Yeah, I mean, we are seeing it's interesting from a psychological point of view to watch games that are playoff games versus games that are not playoff games back to back. Like, we always see the level. We always do. Oh, they're at another level in the playoffs.
Yeah.
You always say that, mentally, but like to actually watch it like in physical form in front of you. I mean, to me, the play in games become about who is it more important for to like have a good showing that day, and who's working on some things like more that they need. Like that was an important game for the Flyers to win. Remember, the Flyers had won 10 games in a row.
Vigneault would have them tuned up. There's no
right, and they won 10 games in a row going into right before the break, and they lost the Bruins on the last day.
Exactly. It was exactly. And I thought about that coming in. It's like their very last memory of playing a game that actually had any meaning was against the very team they're playing tonight.
Right, and I think to the Flyers and the Flyers, trying to prove that they were not just they're also trying to prove they're not a fluke to people. Like there's a thing that there's and you're hearing it everywhere you listen. More and more people are saying, I'm getting text, like I think the Flyers are for real. I think the Flyers are for real. You're hearing people say that.
I want to say
know that we can say that. Yeah, like personally, whether they're for, I mean they're a good team. Whether they're for real or not, I don't know if we can really for real meaning are they.
I do want to say this in the chat room. Like Dean Youngblood and a few others are like, well, Russ isn't going to give any positives for the Flyers. I don't know how many times I have to say they're a good team. Yeah. They came out looking good in that game. Like, I don't know what else I need to say, but if you're trying to tell me they beat the best Boston Bruins, they didn't.
Yeah, and Funky in the chat was anticipating what I was going to bring up. It's like, people are treating the Nazem Kadri goal with 0.1 seconds left in regulation like it was Uwe Krupp's goal to win the 96 Cup for the Apps. Give me a friggin'
Yeah, but that game was better than the Flyers-Bruins game.
It was.
Oh, it's much better.
I mean, you didn't see that.
What you got from Philly was basically, I think, they're not pretty close to A performance, and you got at best from Boston a B level performance, and that's at best. Once the Myers goal happened,
that was when it really dipped.
That's to me where the Bruins after that seemingly in the third period had let up the white flag. They had no shots early on in that period and looked like they were like we're cashing out on this.
The other big thing I noticed, and I'll let you go, Jan. Krejci was getting very few minutes. They know we're not playing him much. We don't want him to get hurt.
Well, forget Krejci. Didn't Bergeron get like almost 8.5 minutes at regular at even strength, which is nothing, which kind of gives you a sense as to just how they viewed it. Plus also with, you put in Halak over Rask, right? No offense to Halak, but, that's an interesting move also. It kind of gives you a sense that if it was a game that they viewed as a material game, that you probably would have somehow seen Rask between the pipes. And it's interesting how teams are viewing the round robin. You got Philly trying to establish trying to establish their place within the standings right now, that it wasn't quote unquote a fluke.
They're also trying to maintain
I thought Boston automatically should have been the number one seed. I thought the round robin should have meant nothing because they had a 10-point lead over everybody else. And I guess they can turn it on whenever they need to or if they have to, regardless of who they play.
I picked Philly yesterday to win when someone asked me. So
yeah, no, Russ is not. I sit next to Russ. Anthony sits on one side of Russ. I sit on the other side of Russ in the press box. Russ is not anti-Flyers, guys. He's just not. I mean, he's not. On this. Obviously he's.
I mean, he's wearing a New York Mets hat, right?
Obviously,
he's literally wearing
negative over the years, but
he's literally wearing a New York Mets hat and a shirt with a Flyers logo on the sleeve. So it's like,
well, he clearly is confused.
You guys. Yeah. So I mean, that's an interesting thing. I only wanted to touch on this briefly because we're going to get into all the other games.
Well, let's go chronologically.
I know. Let's do that. That sounds like a good idea.
Okay, so
let me touch on one thing first before we get to that, because this is an quick overall thing.
Yeah.
And that is, I thought they did a hell of a job with the production. I am not even noticing the fans aren't there. I think it's phenomenal. Like after a while, you just don't get into it because
I agree.
Because the intensity on the ice, hockey is meant to be played in desperate mode. I think because hockey and that's what the playoffs are. Hockey in desperate mode is just so much better than hockey to not desperate mode. But the one thing that makes me crazy is when they play. I'm watching the Chicago Edmonton game, okay, and obviously we're going to get to that.
Yep, but that's the next one.
That's the next one. But the one thing but every time Chicago scores in that game, I'm hearing the goal song for the Chicago Blackhawks in a game that's supposed to be in Edmonton, technically.
It's a weird. I agree, Act. It's a weird. If it's supposed to be, there's certain trappings, like they have the boards, and the advertisements, and everything else. But if it's supposed to be a true home game, you don't play the road team.
Right.
So actually,
that's making me
very strange. I agree.
Hold on.
Because I want there to be some kind. I mean, I know you have the last line change, and that's all there is, right? But it should be all of the music from that home arena playing in that place, including and they should go to every arena and say, what are the songs you guys play the most? Every arena has its own songs, and then no way should we have goal songs.
I will say this: I do wonder if they're waiting, they're testing this out and they're waiting to do this for the actual, when we get to the round of 16, when it's the full 7-game series, and then they do it. But you would figure they'd have an opportunity already.
I don't know about that. I mean, in the post game, Justin Williams on his own added, I wasn't thrilled to hear the Rangers goal song.
Yeah.
Right. If it's supposed to be a home game for them. But here's the thing. You do wonder, though, if they get feedback like that from the players, even on something like that.
Yeah, then they might change it.
By the time you get to the round of 16, then maybe they really go full production, home production all the way across the board.
I have been told this by the people who are I know somebody who's actually in the mixing process of this, so who's mixing in the voice, the sound of the crowd and stuff like that. And they've been told that there is a specific thing on there that they are going that if the crowd is at volume 1 right now, it'll be at volume 2 in the next round, volume 3 in the round after that. They are going to be ramping that up. They're going to be making so the crowd is very understated right now, which is good.
It was unbeknownst to all of us that the Chelsea dagger induced epileptic fits in Mike Smith, because that has to be the excuse that
since you talked about the TV, there is one thing that did hold true that at least was noticed in my house, and I'm not sure in your guys' house. For most of the time that the American anthem was done, it was done horribly, and the Canadian anthem was done great. The Bruins guy nailed it. Everybody else seemed to be experimental with the American anthem and straight on with the Canadian anthem, and that just seemed to be like a thing because I was turning it off. It was that bad.
Why can't we be playing Lauren Hart if the game's in Philly or things like that? We have the video of all those things, every game.
I know. They have Lauren. Basically recording this in her shower stall, and it's it's a massively missed opportunity.
Yeah, take the video of the actual thing.
If you saw it, she actually put that in her tweet. She's like, live from my shower stall.
That's a great reveal.
Calm down, Mike.
All right, let's get to Chicago Edmonton. Yeah, right. We got to get to Chicago Edmonton and fast. All right, let's get away from this.
I didn't say a thing. Just
early in the morning for Lauren Hart in her shower stall. All right, here we go. All right, Chicago, Edmonton. All right, so I am on the weekend.
How about that Oilers defense?
On the weekends, my family goes to the beach. Okay, this is what we do in the summer. We just go to the beach. So I had an incredible setup in my gazebo on the beach of 2 laptops, and I'm watching the beach. I was just I'm like, this is craziness. This is so beautiful. I'm 5 feet from the ocean. I'm watching all the games. So the Edmonton game starts, and I'm like, And this was when we were moving all the I'm the dad who's moving everything to the beach. It's craziness. So I'm trying to get everything down there, and then and I turn on and Edmonton's up 1-0. I'm like, oh, there you go. This game's going to be done quickly. And the next thing I turn around and Chicago's up 3-1, and I watched the rest of that game. And first of all, we had talked about this tons that he was going to start. He was going to start Smith. You guys said he was going to start Smith. I'm like, he can't. He's got Koskinen's better. He's going to start Koskinen. Why he doesn't go in with Koskinen in the beginning of the second period is absolutely baffling.
No idea.
This is him just trying not to lose Smith, I guess.
I'll give you an idea, because he doesn't believe that Koskinen is better than Smith.
I don't think that's maybe. Yeah,
that may be the idea, but boy,
it doesn't matter at that point if you're down 4-1.
I will say this: we're going on Mike Smith, and I think legitimately so. The Oilers' defense was not.
No, yeah, those goals weren't all that bad.
They were awful.
There were 2 really horrific goals, I thought.
But here's the thing that I'm going to throw out there about the Mike Smith and beyond the goals. Obviously, the first goal, terrible handling of the puck, whatever. But beyond the goals, Mike Smith plays the puck 80-90% more than Koskinen does, right? He plays it. And here is the thing in that against Chicago. With the Edmonton defense, which is getting better, but still not great, still young. I would rather have a goalie that's covering the puck up more. I'd rather have a goalie that's like actually like playing the puck more conservatively with passes instead of creating the like I've seen it for years. Like Marty Brodeur, with New Jersey when the Devils defense got lesser as he got older, he stopped handling the puck quite the same way because you have to like there's a certain you have to know what you're doing to and I felt like the Oilers defense doesn't know like to wait on the sideboard sometimes. I mean they know Mike Smith, but it makes for a frenzied atmosphere in their own zone sometimes.
That's a good point. I think that's fair.
It wasn't like Mike Smith had only played like 5 or 10 games during the regular season.
I know.
It was a sizable chunk, and I think that Tippett, based on his experience with Smith and based on his observations of the Oilers' defense this year, knew that Smith being able to handle the puck behind the net and pass it up to his defenseman was a bigger benefit than the unknown of Koskinen. Now I think they have to go to Koskinen because Smith played badly in game 1, but it wasn't all on Smith. Their defense was hideous.
Oh yeah, no, they were bad. They were bad all over the ice too, and their forwards, especially their forward coverage on defense, was hideous. I mean, like there were lots of players, and that was like that was not a typical Edmonton game, and it was really bizarre to see.
It was a typical old Edmonton game.
It was a typical old Edmonton game. It was bizarre to see them take that step backwards because, and I'm going to write off part of it as like, okay, the excitement of being in the playoffs sort of again, and this team they stepped outside and Tippett I believe is a good enough coach that he'll bring them back in pretty quickly. Yeah, and I think we're going to see a different team tonight.
If you remember, I said there were going to be games where Chicago gets 4 or 5 goals, and that was one of them. And that's what you have to watch out for. I mean, they have that offense, and if you can't play defense, I was shocked at how bad Edmonton played defense. But Chicago has a great offense. Like nobody's ever going to deny that.
I mean, Kubelik had a fantastic game. He did. Let me just make this point because I thought
Kubelik's a star, man. He's going to be a star, and it's just crazy. It pisses you. It pisses people who are like Red Wing. I had a Red Wing that I've known for years. He's like, it reminds. I mean, this is a little bit of over exaggeration. Obviously, he got a 5-point game, but it reminds me of like how you felt because me being a Flyers fan when the Penguins of years and years and years of Lemieux get Crosby. Like it's like okay, we got through Lemieux all these years.
They didn't trade a 5th-round pick to LA for Crosby.
No, I know that, but here's a player who's like suddenly out of nowhere, like as Taves and Kane are getting older, this guy comes on as first 5 points up in a playoff game.
You got to remember Thomas played in the league too, and he was a pretty good goal scorer, but he was a little soft. Dominique's not soft.
Among the most ridiculous things on the weekend, and I don't know if this was from Oilers Nation or what, was the criticism of McDavid after the loss for not being too rah-rah.
Yeah, that was ridiculous.
That was
a friggin' break. He's the best player in the
Adrian Dater, wasn't it?
That was Adrian Dater who said
Adrian Dater.
That was Dater.
I'm sorry, I missed that comment. What happened again? I'm sorry.
Adrian said that he, the exact quote. I think I got to get it the exact
quote. Did he call him boring?
Yeah, it's like he's not a dynamic enough personality to rally the. He says, "I'm regretting my pick of the Oilers," and based it on basically McDavid isn't he's an incredibly talented player, but not a dynamic personality that's going to rally the troops.
Not everybody is Mark Messier, for Christ's sake. It's ridiculous.
Come on, you guys know Dater. Come on, like this is. I love it. Adrian Dater is a buddy actually, but this is a definite like this is a.
But it wasn't just him.
This is a Dater troll, like to the Dater troll, and he'll admit he'll be the first to friggin' admit that this was a troll.
It snowballed after that act.
I know that's a good troll, man.
No, well. It's
no, I'm just saying that personally, we shouldn't bite into that because he doesn't mean that at all. He's just like he's a good guy. Dater's a good guy, but he does love this. He loves to do this kind of stuff.
Okay, so I mean, I thought Crawford had a good game. I thought the veteran guys like Taves and Kane, they're not over the hill. I mean, I think Edmonton is going to have to take advantage of the Chicago defense for them to even up the series. I still don't think Chicago is going to win it. But if Edmonton puts up another effort like this,
they're done. Yeah, I mean,
to me, this is like it wasn't quite a blowout because of the way the Oilers made it tight towards the end, but it was a blowout, right?
Well, you know what it was? They were stunned, Eck, and this is where I would not have Smith in there again. Smith took them out of the game, and it stunned them for a while, and then they did start to sort of regroup. But I'm telling you, if they put Smith in there again and he gives up an early goal again, you can count the series over.
And lastly, more to your point and my point, Russ, like that when Smith's the kind of guy, he's like ultra competitive. Like if you've talked to Smith, he is just like, he is crazy. Like he's got that Hextallion type thing to him, that if he makes a mistake like he made in the beginning of the game, it pisses him off and he's going to try to get that mistake back. And by getting that mistake and in goal, you can't have that attitude. You can't be like, I'm going to get something back, because goalie is not about that. You'll end up overplaying your angles. You end up overdoing things. And that's what I saw. They weren't terrible goals. The rest of the goals were, bad plays by the Oilers, but his nervousness, that all feeds into everything.
Yes.
It feeds into the whole thing. So that next game after that would be, Mike, what are we going to go in order?
Islanders and Panthers. And the only thing I have to say about this one is, I can only compare the rest that I got watching this game to when I was in a coma. Because
what I liked about this game, this game I didn't watch as much of because obviously the Oilers game was really on at the same time. It was really more interesting. But what NHL, like, you can't do anything wrong in my mind right now. I wake up on Sunday morning, and I put on the games. They're great. The games don't start till 2 instead of noon, which is, I was pissed off for that 2 hours I didn't have hockey. Damn it. But anyway, so I turn on NHL Network. And they're reshowing the Florida Islanders game for me, which was perfect. So I got to watch the entire game. And I agree with
you. Bob did play better, but end of the day, I am begging Barry Trotz, please take the handcuffs off of Barzal. Like, this just isn't right. He can't play a great two-way game and be the offensive dynamo that he could be. Yeah. He can't do it. You've got to even ease up on that a bit.
It's not going to happen, Russ. It's not going to happen.
I know why, because his contract is up at the end of the year, and they want to keep his number.
Oh, that's not it. That has nothing to do with it right now.
Well, I mean, you could fool me because it's
it has everything to do with Trotz. It's like it's an all for one for all type.
But Varlamov played good. He did. He played really, really good.
Yeah, I mean, they're not thinking contract.
You're never going to see Grisek. I'm sorry.
They're not thinking it right now, but they're thinking it not in October when they have to deal with it.
The announcers did say at one point how surprised they were that how Grice could play and stuff like that. I thought that was interesting. And watching that game, I was like,
of course you tuned into that. I didn't even hear that.
Take a drink.
Was it the Swiss feed?
In the chat room, everybody can take a drink. There's a drinking game going on in the chat room about 3 things about me, like talking about Koskinen, about me talking about Montreal, and me talking about Grice. Everyone can take a drink. I just want everybody to get a nice.
It's a little early, but hey, if you want,
you gotta get your buzz on.
Get the night train ready for the Habs Penguins.
If you're within an hour of game time, you're allowed to drink. That's my rule. So go ahead out there and start drinking now, because it's we're within an hour of game time. All right, so Islanders Panthers. There isn't much to say about this game, really. Completely.
No, the Islanders played it to their perfection.
They did the Islanders thing, and the Panthers. Although the Panthers, and they are fighting out of a slump. Like they feel like a team that's battling to get out of a slump. Like a team. They remind me of that until they got that goal. They reminded me of that team, that Flyers playoff team years ago against Ottawa that just couldn't do anything right for a while, and then they finally, Dan McGillis, I think, scored a goal. The Flyers still ended up losing the series, but the Flyers didn't score a goal for like the first.
Oh, can I say one thing? Matheson is awful. The 5-minute major he took.
That was stupid. So stupid.
I mean, they need to jettison him out, and that was one of the worst contracts they ever gave. He is just not that good.
Wait a second. I gotta give Richard a credit here in the chat room. Come on, that's awesome. It's not hockey without the buzz.
That's good.
Thank you very much. All right.
Brown noser.
I mean, Bob did what he was supposed to do, and he really did. I mean, he was fine. And he looked actually really good at times.
I mean, okay.
The Panthers got better as the game went on. And if you're a Panthers fan, you're looking for any hope at all. The third period, the Panthers were actually maybe even better than the Islanders. I mean, granted, they're trying to come from behind, so it's hard to say. But to beat the Islanders, they're just going to have to score first, and they have to come out harder. They got to come out.
But that's a lot. But again, that's a lot to put on a team mentally. That you put a lot of pressure on. That the minute you're down 1-0, you're already feeling like you're going to be taken out of the game. I don't.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying it's one of the reasons why, again, this was to me Exhibit A watching this game. I picked the Islanders, honestly, and I know some people thought this was a bit bold, and I may be wrong on this. I got the Islanders sweeping the series, and nothing about that game really takes me out of that pit.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's crazy because if the Panthers can get on the Islanders, though, I mean, remember this Islanders team was very fragile. They didn't win it. They didn't win many games down the stretch. But right now, that's all gone. Like, it doesn't matter at all. Like, to them right now, they beat the Rangers. They shut out the Rangers. They basically shut out the Panthers. So they're in their spot where they're I mean, they're all they need to be right now.
We're going to revisit this narrative over and over when we talk about these games. But in game one, the teams that played defense against the teams that played offense, the defensive team won every single time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and a lot. If we actually had real home ice out there, we had a lot of home ice stolen. I mean, there was the lower teams really did win.
Well, Edmonton was the only team that had real home ice, and it didn't matter.
Well, the Maple Leafs
or the Maple Leafs, yeah. But
they had the locker room too, and the Maple Leafs did too.
We'll get to that.
Yeah. So I watched a lot of the Habs and the Penguins.
Yeah, I watched that.
And in spite of the fact that the Penguins came out and I think they outshot Montreal 10-2 in the first 10 minutes of the first period, there weren't a lot of great scoring chances. It was basically get the puck on the net, hope you get it past Price. Their offense improved as the game went along, but Montreal got a couple decent chances, got a lead, and then once Pittsburgh sort of woke up, they tied the game in the span of 3 minutes, and then it was basically a pitched battle between Murray and Price for the rest of the game. I mean, I'll give Montreal full credit, but I don't think that them winning this game. There were a lot of opportunities there that were blown. The Drouin penalty shot, the Sheary penalty shot. Do I think the Canadians are going to win this series? No.
You know what? I do give the Canadians credit because they did play a good game, and I think Julian really had a good coaching exhibition out there, and Weber looked better than we saw him. So clearly,
he looked a lot better. It was bizarre. I mean, he really.
I think as long as these games remain tight, this game played the way Montreal wanted it to go. At the end of the day, they played it exactly. They kept it close. They kept it tight. That was the key to me the entire time. That if this game was going to get late, there was more than a decent chance that Montreal was going to find a way to win it.
Yeah,
I texted to Mike and Russ in the middle of this game, and they, and Mike said it's what every team that's underdog tries to do, and you're absolutely right. But this game was specifically true that you're exactly what you said, Anthony. Like the idea when you're playing in a situation like this, when Montreal, who should be no way, shape, or form be competing against the Penguins right now. You have to play, you have to keep it tight. You have to hope your goaltender steals it, and you want that last bounce. It's like you get the last bounce, that's it, and that's what they did.
The only other thing I was going to say is Connor Sheary looked like John Starks out there with all the misses. He had a couple of open nets. He was just having the worst game of his life.
He's overcompensating. He's going off stride a lot too. Like he's overcompensating a lot. And the thing, there are a couple things that I'm going to brag now for a second, but. And I'm trying not to because I picked this. I told you to bet your house on this game Friday that Montreal would win game one. And I said that.
Here it comes.
All right. I said that. All right.
So we're getting the gelatin mold ready for Mike, first of all.
Thank you. Yes, I know. Mike.
Secondly, Russ.
All right, go get the mold. All right. There you go. All right. So
1994 game 6, because I still have pangs about that loss. So thank you very much.
So here's the thing about why I said that.
Here's why I said that if it's 1-1 after 40 minutes today, does Pittsburgh start gripping the stick a little tighter, starting to get it?
This is what I'm saying. Let me finish my thought for a second, then I'll stop bragging. This is why I said what I said. Okay, the psychology of these two teams is fascinating to me. And the Penguins, we've seen them plenty. I've seen the Penguins plenty, and I know what the Penguins' Achilles heel was perfectly shown when they don't score on the power play. Their team. And Crosby and Malkin and I even saw Getzel a couple times, they start internally turning on each other. And you can see it. You can see there's a lot of frustration that goes up. Malkin had a horrendous game, obviously. He was terrible, awful, just absolutely awful in both the games we've seen from him. And I don't know what's going on with him. It's a bizarre thing, but he's just because he's usually a big game player. If he shows up today, he better. But if he doesn't show up today, then you got to wonder, is he hurt or what's happening? But when they start, they're such a skilled team that they expect themselves to be dominant. They expect themselves to be able to score on power plays. And if they go 0 for 4 or 0 for 5 or 0 for 6 in this game, I think it was, that team doesn't play well even strength. And then they start doing, and Malkin started doing what Malkin does when he's got frustrated, which is start to try to draw penalties all over the place and to try to sit there and complain about every small hack that's at him and stuff like that. And to me, what you saw was the psychology of the Penguins, which I knew if the Penguins just didn't get it together, and also the psychology of the Penguins, not completely having faith in their goaltending right now. And I think that's evident too for what, whoever they should be playing, they're just not faithful. And then at the end of the day with Montreal, this is a coach who's very great at playing the underdog. This was Carey Price at Carey Price.
He was really good.
I mean, he was absolutely what he has to be. He made some unbelievable saves. I mean, even the goal. I mean, Crosby's goal off of his foot, that was just a brilliant Crosby play. And then the Russ goal was just like a bang the net play. But you didn't see any. Those two goals are not Penguins goals. They're not the goals that the Penguins want to score. The Penguins like to score the beautiful goals, the skilled goals.
And that's the thing when they're successful in the playoffs, though, Ak.
Yeah,
those are those.
No, they do a lot of that. They do.
The Russ goals are the goals that they.
No, you're absolutely right.
Because everybody's keyed in on trying to stop Malkin and trying to stop Crosby and the star players. And when Kessel was there, that you forget guys like Rust. And then Rust is the kind of guy who, we all seen it. I mean, Philadelphia people know more than what more.
Oh yeah, no, he's
how much of he and Gensel, how much the two of them are flyer killers.
But by the way,
and that last thing I'll say, and then you guys go in. But the last thing I'll say is this, and you're absolutely right because they are great players. But the Penguins feel like they have to. I mean, they're going out there, and I got a little bit of that feeling of like Toronto against Carolina when the Zamboni driver's in goal type feeling of like
for Christ's sake.
No, but Pittsburgh because you're saying to yourself, there's no way we shouldn't be beating this team. And as the game goes along, the Penguins are saying there's no way. I think
Carey Price is a little better than David Ayers, though.
Oh no, what I'm saying is not that.
Hey, you said it, I didn't.
Mentally, the Penguins were. They did. Everybody. I mean, who was not? I mean,
but see, I
don't. The Flyers are flat out telling you they want to avoid the Penguins. That's why they're trying to win.
I don't buy into.
Penguins have won the series.
I don't buy into that because this game was 2-2 in the third period, and Sherry, if he could hit a foot wide corner in the penalty shot, they win that game. So it's Price had a hand in this, and Price was very good.
But had a hand in it.
But there was
Price more than that.
Early on, it was pretty much the Carey Price show. But Pittsburgh was trying to
talking about later in the game when it was even. Pittsburgh had just as many chances to win that game that Montreal did, and Pittsburgh very easily, if Sherry could hit a corner, wins that game.
So the reason you shoot wide on Carey Price. Carey Price is unbelievable at angles. It's like Carey Price is making them shoot wide.
But the early part of that game,
was
your part and parcel. What Pittsburgh loves to do at the beginning of any kind of a game is try to absolutely just overwhelm you with volume of shots. And again, Montreal was very much in rope-a-dope mode very early in that game throughout the first period. And that ultimately, while we're talking about missing the broadside of the barn door with Sherry, that early part of the game creeps into the Penguins' mindset.
Yeah. By the way, Shesterkin's in for today.
Shesterkin's in. Okay.
Shesterkin's in.
There you go.
Well, I wonder whether Mike Sullivan is going to tell like Zach Aston Reese or Jack Johnson to do a Chris Kreider on Carey Price for Game 2.
I still think the Penguins are going to win the series. I'm not.
Yeah, I so do I.
I still think they are too.
But it's a long one. It's a 5. I think
it's a 5-game series.
This is a 5-gamer. This always felt like a 5-gamer to me.
Yeah, I agree.
Pittsburgh has to win tonight. I mean, the reality is, well, maybe they don't. Maybe Pittsburgh.
No, they need to win. They
do.
do.
Win. All the teams down 1-0 need to win.
You do need to win. You don't want to go down 0-2.
Now, okay, the next one is the game that will be at 2:30 this afternoon, and obviously overshadowing the result of the game was the hit on Scheifele by Matthew Tkachuk.
Sucks.
Now, okay, I'm going to disagree with Paul Maurice and what he's saying, but I think Paul Maurice is saying it for a reason. Yeah. I don't think Matthew Tkachuk purposely went out there to skate cut Mark Scheifele.
No, I agree.
He did not do that. He was going to hit him. Scheifele tried to avoid it. It was an odd situation, but it was not purposeful. And I think that it sucks for Winnipeg because Scheifele is one of the best two-way centers in the league. And they probably lost him, although there was a report from Sarah Oleski yesterday that it wasn't long
term. But what's long in this case? We're talking about long term. We're saying damage going into next season,
right? Versus
being able to come back in this. Even if he does come back, if they're down 0-2, how effective is he going to be after that?
I mean, if it's a partial laceration of an ankle or
it's not. He's playing. They said it's
Scheifele.
I don't know if he's playing the next game, but they said it is not serious.
Okay, well,
that's pretty freaking shocking,
right?
I mean, it really is. That is about as surprising as you can get. That'll be a huge lift for Winnipeg. Even if he's not playing at 100%, it's still a lift to have him in there.
Given the way he went off the ice.
Yes.
Yeah,
we all
Maurice is trying to do, which is it's like, you know,
and just
amazing this stuff still works, but it always will. Is like trying to get the Jets pissed off at Tkachuk. I mean, he's trying to take the pick away from the way the Jets played, which was horrendous, even without Scheifele. I mean, and get them pissed off. I mean, it's you know, there was nothing. It was nothing Tkachuk did, and I heard you listen to Tkachuk. You couldn't say enough how much he didn't. How much he was upset about what happened after the game. It's like there was nothing he did.
And just as concerning for Winnipeg is the Line A injury, which I haven't seen a good angle on it. I've tried to look at, you know, but I think it was Sam Bennett and Giordano, and there was some contact behind the net. You know, and his status is in question. You take out Scheifele, you take out Line A, and the odds in this series, I think everybody picked the Jets. Mm-hmm. They've swung wildly in favor of.
Sure. I've seen picks. I think for us, I think we've all said Jets, but I know there's definitely more of a wide spread on.
Yeah, it is. I know
the pick on that series.
I'm still going with the Jets, I
think it's a 5-gamer, and again, if Scheifele is back in any level close to what he normally is able to do, I think offensively the Jets can still win this series. But without him and without Line A, it becomes a real tall order.
Yeah, no, it really does. And I mean, the bigger thing was just like the Flames got all they needed out of the game. I mean, Gaudreau scoring right off the bat, that was huge for them. They got great goaltending out of Talbot, which was Talbot showed up, which was a huge thing because, you know, that's a big question mark. So the question marks the Calgary Flames had were all going in the positive direction for that game. Yeah. I think the Jets are happy probably that, you know, even though we'd like maybe give Scheifele more time, I think they're going to be happy to get back at it right now. I think they got to write that game out. I was listening to the Winnipeg Jets radio broadcast a little bit because I was driving later, and I was just pretty amazed at you know, how negative the Jets radio broadcasters were. Oh my gosh, they were just like, this is over, it's done, we're finished. It's just, no Scheifele, no Line A, forget about it. They were just unbelievably.
Well, when you lose your top two forwards, it's tough to be rosy.
Oh, I'm not saying be rosy, but they were just you know, handing it to Calgary at that point. I thought that's a little bit.
Well, I mean, that's, you know,
Calgary's got it. Calgary's, you know, can help play into that. All right, so let's move on now to the next day.
The early game, and I get the feeling that the alarm clock was set a little late for the Nashville Predators, and especially Juuse Saros, because that first period. Now, he played better the rest of the game.
He did. That first period was bad.
First period was brutal, and that really cost them the game because after that, I thought the Predators, you know, they had 43 shots on goal in that game. They were down 4-1. They came back in the third period charge and made a game of it. Whereas I didn't think really Edmonton did that against Chicago. But they got a couple, by the way, goals when they were down 6-2. But the score wasn't reflective of how close that game was. This was a close game. And, you know, I think the Preds are in the series. You know, they lost the first one. But, you know, and I didn't think Kemper was particularly strong either, Russ.
No, he had a good game. I mean, I felt like Kemper had a good game. I felt like the guys, as frustrated as Tocchet was in the game before, he wasn't frustrated in that one. They listened to him. Hall looked great. Keller, they left Keller wide open. I don't understand on a penalty kill how you could just let Clayton Keller walk in. That was bizarre. There were some moments that were bad, and I think they're fixable. But, yeah, Saros kind of diffused them a little, and Johansson had a garbage game.
Yeah, and Jan, by the way, it's like I'm shocked that the game winner was Michael Grabner scoring on a shorthanded breakaway because I saw about 25 of those with the Leafs, and he scored on 0.
Yeah, well, with the Rangers, he had 25 of them and probably scored on about 22 of them.
Yeah, he converted a lot.
Yeah, he was deadly on
perspective in New York. Look, I mean, Nashville woke up late, right? So they have to take some solace the fact that they made a 4-1 game into a nail-biter, right? Arizona's got to realize you can't take the foot off the gas pedal regardless of what's left. So I'm expecting a much better game, too, and a much more competitively balanced game throughout as opposed to the dichotomy we saw between the two halves of the game.
Yeah, this is not the game that Hines wanted to play. Like the coach, I think the problem is, you know, everything about the Predators has been how much better controlled they are defensively, and then when you fall down like that, you know, I mean, the good thing
when they were down. The only thing I was going to say is when they were down, you saw the lengths, and this is the reason I voted for Yossi for the Norris. You saw the lengths that Yossi had to go through to sort of restart that offense.
Yeah.
He was doing it single-handedly for a while.
Yeah, especially when you don't have, again, as you said, when you don't have your top line center in Johansson really doing much of anything in the game.
Yeah.
That's a tall order for anybody in that circumstance. Johansson's got to re-engage himself in game.
He's
really
been that
does.
way too often ever since he's gotten there. Right? That's been
I know.
Ever since he's been in the NHL, he's been that way. I mean,
Listen, that's been a Ryan. Unfortunately, it's been a Johansson issue going back to his Columbus days too.
No, I mean, it was the Philip Forsberg show.
Oh yeah,
That's what it was.
Mm-hmm.
and Johansson, I always sum up his career by the time that he was sent down by Columbus after Columbus was eliminated. I think they put him in the AHL playoffs or something like that, and just because they wanted to try to get him going, and he was in an AHL playoff series, and he got 1 point in 7 games in the AHL. And I was just like, that's just like for him to be able to.
But he still had some good seasons. We don't want to totally.
No, we're not crashing.
Ability.
He's always been wildly inconsistent.
Yeah.
But he does, and when he's not engaged, he's really not engaged, and it's really bizarre to me that the incredible thing about this, and I thought about this because we were watching a documentary last night with the kids trying to fall asleep, and it was on the Coliseum and like the Roman Coliseum and some really cool stuff. I was watching this, and the gladiators were like, they lived there, they lived at the Coliseum, and the whole thing was like. To me, when I was watching this, I couldn't help but think about, they were talking about the energy they built up because they just lived there waiting to play, and they never went outside. They weren't allowed any freedoms at all. They were just, kept in this place until they had to go and battle. And I'm thinking to myself, this is really what we're seeing. These NHL players are so cooped up and so, bogged down that we're actually seeing like this like gladiator type mentality, which is like lovely to watch and just so much fun.
Heck, I'm sure glad that I'm sure your family is glad that you were watching a documentary on the Nassau Coliseum.
No, yes, exactly. But
about the bathrooms.
I think that they're going to stay with Saros, and the next game is going to be absolutely huge for them. Obviously, the Predators. I felt like this was a huge Taylor Hall moment too. Like, I mean, we had to talk about that. Taylor Hall was who was playing for a contract, had his best game by far.
It was also a huge moment for the Oscar Mayer spokesman Phil Kessel because he had a couple of assists.
And he played good defense. He
actually played a pretty good game. So it's like
he's a good playoff player in his career. He really
has been. Yes.
I mean,
I give him a lot of credit and pass the mustard.
Yeah, I mean, I think that and it was just this was you saw a little bit in the practice game where Hall was like doing everything like I talked about, but he was the only player doing it. His Taka got them up for it. And again, where you see coaching without fans, we talked about how important coaching is going to be. Taka got this team up for this game, and they came out, and they came out hard. And that was something I think that, and the Preds have to match that. And again, the people started handing this series to the Preds maybe a little bit too much, kind of like the Rangers. I think the Preds didn't quite have. They didn't
with the personnel, like it's just shocking at times.
Yeah, it really is. All right, so next up was Flyers Boston, which we don't have to talk about because that's we talked about that one probably enough already.
What's that?
We already talked about the Flyers in Boston. I
was going to say let's just lump in the round robins because if we want to talk any more about that one, but Blues Avalanche ended up 2-1 Colorado on a Nazem Kadri goal with 0.1 seconds left. I mean, honestly, I just would rather talk about the fact that the round robin games, I watched like a period of Flyers Bruins, and it was totally uninteresting and totally without any kind of verve compared to the other playoff games. So I just checked out on them. It's like
I don't think they had any option though. I think in the end of the day,
but it was just not. I mean, when you put games,
can't compare it.
Yeah, when you put games of consequence next to games of no consequence, the contrast is stark.
I'll tell you though, you know what the problem is that they're counting as playoff games in stats.
Right,
and
that's the confusion.
That's Anthony made that point.
I made the point as everybody was excited. This is Carter Hart's first playoff start, and to me, I'm like, if I'm going to create a division between a postseason versus an actual playoff start, where there's no threat of elimination. That being said, you still want to get out on the right foot.
Oh yeah,
and that in that circumstance, I think that occurred here for Philadelphia, and that's really Philly did what they wanted to do. They wanted to make sure that they had everything sort of rolling where they left off from 4 months ago.
I think
that's how I took a look at it. But until the games are actual eliminate, when there's the threat of elimination, that's to me when I'm saying, okay, this is true playoffs, no matter how the NHL is going to define it.
And maybe for Carter Hart though, that the fact that the Flyers finished like with one more point or whatever than the Penguins or however close it was. I think might be the greatest thing to ever happen to him, though, because if he had stepped right into elimination games, as a young player.
Yeah, you don't know.
This is
the thing is, we just don't know because again,
we don't know.
And we all have seen it obviously amongst Philadelphia media about how he's so calm and cool and collected.
Yeah.
I don't think how many times we heard about the 71 BPM. He was cool, so cool, and he was completely collected in his play. And you certainly, if you're a Flyers fan, that bodes well.
Yeah.
But again, it's not where your season could potentially be slipping away if you're performing.
And there's no word on Raffle. I'd be surprised if he plays next game, though. I don't think he will.
We'll see within a day. We need to get the report on that. And again,
I wouldn't play him anyhow. I just wouldn't.
I probably wouldn't. I would give Joel Farabee an opportunity.
I would put Farabee in just to put him in.
I think at this point, the Flyers get one more win. They would. I mean, the main thing I said about the Flyers when I talked to them is that they just don't want to play the Penguins in the first round. And I think that they're feeling that if they can get, if you get even one more point out of this, you're avoiding the Penguins. That's a piece of the reality. So I think that that's something that matters to them. Although the Islanders are the other team they don't want to play, and you can't avoid that. But to me and then the other game was good. The other game was actually better. The Colorado St. Louis game was actually a better game. These are two really good teams. This felt like this would easily be a Western Conference final type game. Like that these teams will play again, and we're going to remember the fact that they played this meaningless game at some point because it was definitely. It was a good game. I mean, it was exciting too. I mean, Kadri's goal at the end, but the crazy thing about Kadri scores right after he almost scored. He really missed the opportunity on this game like 20 seconds earlier, on like a wide open net. But it was still something that I thought that was a good one. But then stepping back in now into the playoff games.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk Leafs, Blue Jackets.
Leafs and Blue Jackets. Yep. Yeah. This game. Can I say the most confusing thing about this game first? It's really simple. Is whether it started 8 or 9 was like baffling to me because did anybody else get this? Like it said 8:00 on the NHL app, obviously, but then when I'm watching television on NBC, they listed it twice as starting at 9:00. I'm like, what the heck? Anyway, that's neither here nor there. Go ahead.
All I know is when we were doing our predictions on the Off the Post show, Russ read off a series that didn't even exist. The Rangers in Boston. So I don't know.
On the ESPN site.
It was on the ESPN site. So
Russ might have been a little tired.
No. It was there. It was.
No, that's right. It was on ESPN, which was your first mistake.
There you
go. To quote that great analyst of sport, Dennis Green, they are who we thought they were. And that's what the Columbus Blue Jackets were. I saw this coming a mile away. I'm not the only one. This was a matchup that would challenge the Leafs, a highly skilled team, against a team that can shut you down. And and that's what Columbus did. That was a Peterborough freeze from the drop of the puck to the end. They played Tortorella hockey the entire way. The Leafs, I thought, played. Frederik Andersen played great in the first two periods. I thought he was the better of the two goaltenders, and the Atkinson shot was not a weak shot, but probably something that should have been stopped. But when you don't score any goals, you can't win. That's what Sheldon Keefe said. That's what John Tavares said, and that's the truth.
That's the first time I've heard that.
Yeah. We should say,
you know what I mean? It's like to me. I mean, the Blue Jackets made them play their game. I mean that was the thing that was crazy. And, I mean I didn't. If you're not watching this, and you say it's 0-0 in the third period. You're like, wow, that's the Blue Jackets game. You're not. I mean, this Toronto should be scoring goals. I mean, they should be scoring goals. And
I'm gonna write about this later on today when looking at this game. I went through. There were 5 keys for the Leafs to win the series against Columbus. And if you look at game 1 and as a microcosm, they needed Tavares and Marner to step up because we knew that Matthews was going to get matched up against Dubois and Seth Jones and Werenski. They did that. Right. Matthews he had a great scoring chance where Korpisalo stopped him. But other than that, he was basically snuffed out, and Tavares and Marner were a no-show. Marner didn't have a shot on goal in the entire game.
Really absent.
It was a really surprising game, though. Like, this is exactly how we all thought it would go, though.
And the other thing that I mentioned earlier to you guys prior to the series, the beginning, special teams is critical. Toronto got 1 power play in that game. I said how the series is called, the officials, how they call it, may very well determine the series. And Columbus does not they're very disciplined. They don't.
You know what? Werenski was the best player on the ice. Like, he made they look bad.
I think Jones was the best player on the ice. I
don't know about that.
He was ragdolling Zach Hyman and shadowing Matt.
I saw a physical defenseman and automatically it was like ding 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 ding.
What occurred to me is,
doesn't it?
I thought Jones was good, but I would actually lean. I thought Werenski's performance was just as good, if better, than Jones was in that game.
And I have to say this: it's like, I'm not saying that the Leafs can't come back and win this series. They very well can. They have the talent to do it. I don't think they played badly, but they played into what Columbus wanted to do. They played right into Tortorella's game.
Death is safe.
But that's Tortorella, right? A heavy game. They're going to cycle. They're going to look for opportunities. They took advantage of the one they got. I thought Anderson actually played a pretty good game. But Korpisalo had the save of the game. I mean, he scores there. That whole game is different.
And that save was like it's like the Simpsons episode. Of your heart being torn out of your chest to go. You won't be eating this.
Thank you, Scratch.
That's exactly it.
No, but they and Torts rolled 4 lines where Keefe, after one bad shift in the first period, basically benched his 4th line for the entire game and went with 3 lines. And by the end of the 3rd period, they were exhausted. So he won that battle.
Torts will always roll 4. Always.
But I have to say this, and this is not a, Austin Matthews has every right to make any kind of statement he wants to. But after losing a game 2-0, after a game, they hadn't played a game in 4.5 months. It wasn't exactly the right time to come out when Steve Simmons asked him a question in the post-game conference to lead off with a rebuttal from Steve Simmons.
That is a frustrated young player there who knows he had a chance to change the game, did not do so. And, some of this also comes with growth and maturity, but it was very obvious. And I asked this before, another thing I asked before the show is, if this was a 3-2 Leafs win in game 1, does he still go after Simmons? Maybe after answering the question, say, and by the way, Steve, maybe it happens afterwards.
Maybe after.
I think he may have still taken his shot, but I do think frustration of how this game played out, of having the game on his stick and not scoring there, I think his frustration boiled over and the minute he saw Steve Simmons, he was like a bull seeing red.
Yeah,
like, I'm coming right after you because I'm getting this off my chest now.
And even Simmons said, it's like if this was normal times where he would be around the team over the last 4.5 months and would have seen Matthews, he probably would have taken him aside and talked to him. And this was like probably the first chance that Matthews had to confront him about this. All that being said, it's up to the player to keep himself under control. And I thought that was the wrong thing and the wrong message to send when most of the fan base is frustrated that a team that scored the 3rd most goals in the NHL couldn't get a goal against Columbus.
I do want to say this too. With all the piling on from some of the media, like Wyshynski and others on Simmons, I think you have to be careful here because Matthews did have a problem with the law, and Simmons didn't really kill him for that. He didn't do anything out of the ordinary for that. He did it for this, and this is his job. And so at the end of the day, I know people want to just say, oh, good for Matthews. We really killed
Well, I think things accelerated after – because there's not very obviously there's an issue. There's issues between Simmons and James Myrtle. Very
there's no question about that.
And what happened is that, again, I think Greg and a lot of other people are, very tight. They're tight with Myrtle.
Right.
And came, I think, after Simmons went after Myrtle, and then Myrtle had his reply with the photograph from the practice. Things snowballed after that, and they came to Myrtle, to James' defense.
And I like to weigh in here. First of all, they need to respect Simmons a little bit more than this, as he's been doing this for a heck of a long time, and it's like I really have a trouble with like internet, and Greg's been doing this for a long time too, but not as long as Simmons has been doing it for. Okay, and also Myrtle is he's I'm not a fan. Okay, he's just but all that being said, is this the reality is, don't make us the story. Don't.
Right.
Well, I mean, but that was after the fact. I was just dealing with
just don't do it. Like I know Twitter exists and all that stuff, but I would never ever take it. I don't care what anybody. And people have said some crappy things about me. I've never ever taken a shot at anybody publicly or even privately. Like, just if we're gonna ignore it, we're not the story. It doesn't even matter. Like, it just It's just wrong, and really, I have a really big problem with people who don't respect the guys who've been covering this league for a very long time. This
to put a capper on this. This should have been addressed before the post game press conference ever took place between Matthews and Simmons. If there was a problem with it. And I just think bringing it up at 10 minutes after you lost and were shut out, and lost I think it was it was their second consecutive playoff loss. But I'm talking about a team that's lost three years in a row in the first round. The focus shouldn't be on that. The focus should be on the game, and that's all I'm saying.
Got it. Yeah, no, I'm
let's talk about the Wild game.
No, before one last thought I have on this game before we move on, and if I could, and this is going to be a little hope for Leaf fans, honestly. Because watching this game, I picked Columbus to win this series too, and but I think that I was kind of impressed that the Leafs played some better defense than they usually do. I mean, there was some, and that the idea here is they obviously said, you get the idea that their coach says we've got to play good team defense, right?
I
think defense hurts them because they're an offensive team for sure, and it limits them. But they did. And here's my last thing, and Mike then respond, please. This is my thing, okay? If they can find a way to win this series, playing that way, playing better defensively, that could be a huge step for them. That could be a huge step. I mean, I could see them being dangerous in the next round if they can find a way to get past.
I don't think they played pretty well defensively. That's the thing. It's like Dubois had a breakaway that Anderson made a fantastic save on. There was another opportunity in the first period that was a clear break where Nylander and Justin Hall were split. They benefited from a goalie who in the first 40 minutes was sharp and on his game. They still gave up, and got to remember, the Blue Jackets are not a blinding great offensive club. They picked their spots. They got the goal from Atkinson, one of the only guys on the team that can actually score consistently, and then they shut them down. And if the Leafs can get a goal or two, then they put Columbus in an awkward position of having to open up and try to score. But that's the problem. I don't know if they'll ever get there. That's why I picked Columbus to win this series.
Yeah, I mean, Columbus could be really dangerous in the playoffs in general. I mean, they really could be. I mean, honestly, watching them play,
breakout was better than the Leafs. So
yeah, and watching them play. Then let's go to the final game of the night. Minnesota, Vancouver. Funny moment on this game. I don't know if because I was listening on the radio a little bit because I was driving back from the shore, so I was going in both and things. The Minnesota Wild, announcers doing their play-by-play, continued and did enough because they're watching the game, of course, from wherever they are. They did the play-by-play, and then they did the play-by-play of the instant replay as if it was happening in live time. So they didn't realize it, of course, because they're saying they're watching, they see the replay, so they're saying, and this is just like the play that just happened, and they're like, yeah, I think that was the replay of what just happened. I heard that was pretty fun. But anyway, moving on to the actual game.
Well, I have to say this: if Minnesota continues to pound Elias Pettersson as they did in Game 1, he'll be dead on arrival.
Well, we knew they were going to, right?
I mean,
it's not only Pettersson. Their whole entire forwards didn't show up last night. All their shots, or the most of them, came from their defense yesterday. Their forwards were invisible for the most part.
Well, Brandon Sutter actually had a good game, surprisingly.
But if Brandon Sutter's you're in a lot of trouble. You're in a whole heap. You are a whole lot of trouble.
Point it out. That's all.
Yeah.
Well, you're not going to win a series with Brandon Sutter. I mean, that's like saying you're expecting the Flyers to win a series if Nate Thompson's going to be your leading scorer.
Right, exactly.
The Wild team did everything.
It's true. It is the playoffs.
Yeah, the Wild team did everything we thought they would do. Stalock did more than anybody thought he could do. That's for sure. He was beyond locked in. I was shocked. Although I got to tell you, I had an argument.
He had some moments though in that game where he was.
But I had an argument with a friend offline because we were talking about this series, and I said the Wild are going to win regardless of who's in net because their goaltending is good enough. And they, that person felt like that isn't good enough. But Stalock played like unbelievable, like that. I could never have expected.
I will say this is that if anybody's coming after Jacob Markstrom.
No,
some of that was already starting last night, and I'm like,
that's ridiculous.
Markstrom is not going to be the reason that the
the goal he gave up to Spurgeon between the 5-hole wasn't particularly attractive looking. I mean, again, it was like the Red Sea parting by how much room he left there.
Yeah, I mean, that was not a great look.
Yeah,
Travis Green having like 15 guys on the ice at one
But he
point.
needs that. But again, at the same time, they need that offense to kick in, and they were not there.
Did you see that? That was like 12 or 13 guys on the ice. Like that was ridiculous.
Yeah.
Right after they had drawn a penalty, like that killed them.
And this game got a little chippy.
Furlan
got a $5,000 fine for a spear, and Luke Cunnan got a $1,000 fine for unsportsmanlike conduct.
But there's not gonna be any time.
NHL's back, baby.
Are we just finding the guy for the spear? That's kind of like
he needs to get a game. He literally
does. That's something that happened there.
Now I get it. Cunnan held his stick and he probably said some choice words, but at the end of the day, you still speared the guy on the bench.
Well, Russ,
guy.
There is no consistency, because if you look at the Matheson hit on Boychuk and you look at the Kajula hit on Ennis, they're the same hit. They hit the head first. They both snapped their necks back. One got a 1-game suspension. One didn't.
Yeah, I can't. Again, Department of Safety, I don't know what you're doing. I don't.
Oxymoron, Department of Players. Many times.
And Casper Kapanen got a 10-minute misconduct at the end of the Leaf game for, I think, cross-checking one of the Columbus defensemen. It should have been a 2-minute penalty. I mean, it didn't matter because the game was already over with. But it's like, okay, show a level of consistency here, please.
Yeah.
A little bit. I mean, and
do you know the only consistency that's coming right now?
Inconsistency. Thank you very much. Yes.
Fiala was amazing in that game, as they said.
He was good. He was great.
Was great.
He really was. That's the kind of guy I don't understand how he got moved out of Nashville. It's still like the Nashville people can't get it either.
That's something that's That's something we probably won't ever figure out. I'm assuming there must have been something behind the scenes. Who knows? But
he was always a talented player.
He was a talented player, but he was. I will say, coming in, he was inconsistent, and maybe they got to a point.
He's not a strong defensive player. He had to learn how to round out his game.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and they just and at the time, Nashville just again. I think it also is the case with Nashville of where they were as a team. Where they're going to play him. Whereas again in Minnesota, they could play him on a higher line.
Yeah.
It may just be where Nashville was, and they just couldn't afford to wait any longer.
I mean, it's the same as Donato. You saw it. Donato had a really good game. He was effective. He was around the net. The Bruins dispatched him quickly.
To me, it all comes down to Fiala getting hurt in that playoff run for the Predators. You know, if Fiala,
I remember that. Yep.
If he's a part of that playoff run, because he was like dominating early in the playoffs. If he's a part of that playoff run, there's no way he's ever been moved out of there, because he was gonna be a dominant player in that playoff series completely. Now we still have one game that
I will stuff Pat for calling him the X factor in the series. So yes, I am.
Yes, you did. Pat. I agree. And so we have. We'll leave you guys with this. We have one game, this one series that hasn't begun yet, and it's gonna start today. And I can't wait. I mean, Dallas, Vegas, and I want to talk about.
Well, that's a round robins.
Yeah, that's
the round robin. Right? Why do I keep thinking that's not? I'm sorry, I keep losing my mind.
You want it to be a series.
I want it to be a series.
It'll be a series eventually.
Right. So we have a couple round robins. This is what comes from no sleep.
Well,
but let me throw this out there. Ryan Reeves hit on Nick Schmaltz in the game before this. Okay, I tweeted about it. I saw this is every bit as bad as Matheson's. I don't get it. I don't get why Ryan Reeves hasn't been suspended at all. Like, to me, and it was a really dirty play. I mean,
I don't know if it was a dirty play. I don't know about that.
Yeah. It really was. I mean,
I didn't feel that way. Even though it's Ryan Reeves, I didn't feel that way.
I mean, it was definitely. I mean, it was every bit this. I mean, I tweeted about it. I put the video of it when it happened. I just this is crazy that there was no talk about it. I don't get it. I really don't. But maybe you guys don't think so. I don't know. So we'll see that game today. We'll see Tampa goes. We see the other teams get going as well. But I was gonna say a little bit of news that contradicted what was reported earlier.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say. Corey Laviolette had Shesterkin and it's Lundqvist. So
it's Lundqvist.
Yeah. There you go.
That changed. That is Lundqvist.
No, I think it was always.
He just got it wrong.
He just got. I think the lineup card may have had Shesterkin listed above Lundqvist originally, which is what caused some of the.
Well, they always hit the bold. They always bold it out.
But he's a healthy scratch. Not a healthy start. He is a scratch Shesterkin today.
Yeah, they're supposed to. Yeah, they're supposed to
be between the pipes. Stephen Fogarty is dressing for Fast on the fourth line. As we talked about, Julien Gauthier moves up to the third. Capo Caco moves up to the second.
And not a surprise, Matt Murray is starting for Pittsburgh against Montreal. Not shocked. He was not.
No, he recovered enough, I think. I think he's earned another. It was kind of a source of conversation, I think, when we were watching it. as to whether or not they would go to Jari. But I think at this point now, they're going to stick with Murray, and then if he has a bad game here, then obviously if they're down 0-2, then I think you'll see. Then
even if he has a good game, and they're down 0-2, they'll change because
they'll change the Jari if they're down 0-2. Well, it depends on Murray's performance. I think if Murray is. I mean, it's true. It's psychologically, they may say we need another look. That's true.
Because if they don't go, if they just go to Murray and get say they were to get swept, that's not going to happen. But say they were to get swept here with Murray and go over 3 games, that's something that would be hard to justify. I think if they lose this game, even if he played really well, just the whole idea of you got Jari's a good player and you're down 2-0, you bring him in and give him and try to just say, hey, we're going to run.
If they go down 2-0, I think they should go Jari.
Yeah, I think they will, no matter what. But I didn't think it was Murray's fault at all either. I thought he was fine. I thought he was absolutely fine. So today, it's been just a great slate of games on. I really, really hope that you all get a chance to watch as many as you can. And I'm telling you, I don't ever want to go back to a regular NHL playoffs. That's where I'm at right now. This is the great
hyperbole.
Is there any denying?
I like it.
Really, is there any denying that this is better than anything we've ever had?
It's definitely different and more fun. I don't know necessarily if it's better.
We're just so starved for it, Ek. It seems
it's that
bastardized the regular season, also having 24 out of 31 teams make it.
Well, no, I do agree with you there, and I do think though that this might give some merit to play in games in the future. I think that's this could.
Well, and when we've had Kevin on the show, and he that he's somebody who's in favor of expanded play. I mean, I've always wanted the play-in to expand to 20, especially when it goes to 32 teams next year. That I think having 20 to go down to 16, the best of 3. Or even a 1-game play-in would be fantastic. It would be a package that they could sell and
you get a good set. You get a pair of play-ins, maybe a 7-10, 8-9, and then figure things out and then figure out those final things from there. You get the 10 because I think eventually they are going to go to 10 per conference.
Yeah,
I do think that's going to happen.
Yeah. You have 32 teams soon. Mm-hmm. I think it makes sense to do that, and I think you still. But when are we ever going to get a chance again to watch every freaking game? Like the concept, to me, the concept of the first round is so exciting. But you have 4 games going on at once, every night, and we get to watch every single game. Plus, we get 2 first rounds of the playoffs essentially, which is like this is just phenomenal. We are going to try. We are going to. I mean, and I know it doesn't make as much sense. You can't have games at noon if you have fans in the crowd.
No, but in the current financial situation that the league is in, and they're trying everything they can to increase revenue, ad revenue. They're the Nestle official candy bar of Canada, the Roman, for
better stick handling.
For better stick handling, all these things, and they're looking to drive ratings, and they're being effective at doing that act. But eventually, when things return to normal,
here's the big problem. And I noticed this. I got a note 2 days ago from my fantasy league saying, hey, you're in the playoffs. I was 300 points out of the playoffs. I was the Montreal Canadiens. I am now in 3rd place in the league. I had an 11% chance of winning, and now I could win it. And the same thing goes with the Canadiens. If the Canadiens win the Stanley Cup, we're all going to have a different attitude about this, except Ek.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think the NHL is getting I think they're getting I forget the quote. I'm trying to remember. Out of uncertainty comes opportunity is the quote from I think Albert Einstein. I like to quote Einstein at every show. And so to me, what you're seeing here is that you're seeing this. They're taking advantage of this opportunity in the NHL because it's a horrible situation, right? But they're taking advantage of this in every way. They are getting an absolute. They're getting so much bang for the buck out of this. They're getting their ratings. Their ratings are great. This is such a great advertisement for the sport in general, so if there's ever a question as to whether or not they should try to get this in, despite all that's going on, there's no question.
No, there's no question about that.
But this is going to do so much for the league that it's going to be absolutely insane. I think this is going to help the league in so many.
They got 1.54 million viewers on NBCSN for the Canadiens Penguins, which is the highest thing since excluding a Winter Classic. And if you count the 2 million. I think it was over 2 million that you got for Canada. That eclipses pretty much any sport.
Isn't that insane?
But unfortunately, you can't count them both. But if you did, it would eclipse any sport that was on television so far.
And we're talking about playoff hockey, like all these, and we're going to overtime. All these games potentially could go to overtime, and everyone.
You're already in a playoff format versus again the NBA, which is still in the process of working through the rest of their regular season.
Yeah.
So that has to be obviously.
No, that's fair. That's fair.
As much as we don't love the round robin, I don't think they had any option besides that. Honestly, they couldn't let these teams not play right now. They
had to get their legs under them, Mac. They have to get their system, because otherwise those other teams have a 5-game series and they're already warmed up, and you had to have these games. And I think for the most part, the teams that are of the top 4 that are taking it seriously, it'll work to their advantage once they begin them. And as I said earlier, Boston in their last 2 games better look a heck of a lot better than they looked in their exhibition game in this one.
2 minutes to game time.
All right, guys, let's do it. Everybody, go grab yourself a beer, because you're allowed. We officially, the Hockey Buzzcast gives you the right to drink from now until 1:30 this morning.
Bloody Mary.
Remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. There you go. We'll talk to you again tomorrow.